Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the recap and review of NCIS Season 16, Episode 19, Perenial. We're immediately thrown right into the middle of an open heart surgery when suddenly a shooting starts taking place the floor below them. The operating room is evacuated until the only three people left are the patient, the surgeon, and nurse Faith Tolliver to finish the surgery. Back at NCIS, Bishop walks into the squad room with a dead plant that she has become very emotionally attached to and won't let anyone throw out because she wants to revive it. Meanwhile, Jimmy Palmer comes up with stacks and stacks of green printer paper that someone in purchasing accidentally ordered because she didn't realize it was green, and so he wants to distribute it as scratch paper to save her job. Not all heroes wear capes. Palmer takes one look at Bishop's plant and he's like, no, that's way dead. Jimmy, you can't say things like that. You might have left a cryptic note telling her otherwise. The team then heads off to the hospital where the shooter has already fled on foot after being shot and scared off by an off-duty cop. While the team is taking statements, Sloan rushes up to Gibbs and demands a list of the victims and says she's recusing herself from the case but won't tell him why, which is definitely not suspicious. They find a blood trail from the shooter, and Torres says that he's learned to process most cases, but there's something about a guy going and shooting innocent people that really brings out his inner swan, which basically just means he's pissed. Down in autopsy, Bishop and Palmer look up information about the woman who was killed in the shooting, including stuff like her favorite movie, because they want to make sure she's not just another woman on the table. And it's just a very genuinely important scene that I'm glad was included in the episode. Torres goes and he brings Casey a sample of the shooter's blood, but he also brings Bishop's plant to help repurpose his negative energy. He really got over that whole "I'm accusing you of murder" thing last week. Water under the bridge, I'm sure. Torres tells Casey to just throw some water on the plant to save it, which is a method I've often tried. Which is why all of my plants are fake. The team reviews security footage and they can see the shooter was wearing a Marine uniform and also talked to Nurse Tolliver before he attacked. Speaking of Nurse Tolliver, Gibbs confronts Sloan and tells her that he knows why she was recusing herself from the case. And Sloan admits that yes, Faith Tolliver is her biological daughter. They also kind of hint that this was brought up a little bit before during a night of drinking between Sloan and Gibbs, which just sounds like a wild night if I've ever heard one. Sloan says her daughter doesn't know who she is and she intends to keep it that way for approximately the next 7 minutes. So Faith is coming in to be interviewed about the case, and Vance and Gibbs both invite Sloan in to be a part of it because they thought that was a good idea. For some reason, Gibbs did not just burn rule number 10. He's really just dancing on the ashes now. So they bring Faith in, and Sloan is also in the room, and the way she just keeps staring at her, she's just absorbing her daughter, because this is the first time she's seen her since the day she was born, and now she's an adult woman, and I'm getting choked up about it. Gibbs convinces her to describe the man, and she ends up giving them a really great rendering to go off of. During this time, the blood tests also come back and reveal that the shooter was not actually a Marine, but was just disguising himself as one. In the lab, Casey also reveals that she has spoken to her friend Bob the botanist, who has said that Bishop's plant has been dormant too long to be revived. They put out the rendering that Faith helped them with, and through the tip line they're able to discover that the man has been identified as 18-year-old Evan Sykes. They track Evan to his house and find his blood and his uniform and his dad, but no Evan. They also find empty ammo boxes, leading them to believe he's restocked and is planning more attacks. They bring in Evan's computer and they figure out that he was trying to print something, but he has this virus on his computer that will only let him print 400,000 pages of gibberish first. If only we had 400,000 pieces of scrap paper lying around. I love all of the unsuspecting, unsung heroes we've been getting these past couple of episodes. There's this woman from purchasing, and then there was Straussy a couple weeks ago who helped stop World War III. Maybe next week, Bob the botanist will help stop the next E. coli outbreak, who knows? They eventually get to Evan's document and see that his next 2 targets are an ice skating rink and an elementary school. They bring Evan's father into interrogation, who says that Evan was always a good kid until his brother was arrested for a DUI incident a few years prior, and then he just kind of started spiraling. He also says that Evan is mad at the Navy for not asking for a lighter sentence. The father keeps kind of trying to make excuses for the son, and Swan Torres in the room is literally taking none of his shit. The father also claims to not know where Evan is currently hiding. Gibbs and Bishop then go to talk to Officer Mosby, who was the off-duty cop that shot Evan and scared him off in the beginning. While they're waiting in the hallway, Bishop decides there's no time like the present to bring up her plant. That plant also just so happens to be from Ziva's office. Gibbs tries to throw the ghost of rule number 10 in her face and is like, see, this is what happens when you get involved, you can't move on. Then Bishop brings the conversation and my pulse to a screeching halt and is like, if you know, I need you to say it. And she's not talking plants. Gibbs says that he doesn't know what Bishop is talking about, but before we or Bishop can figure out whether or not he's lying, the doctor says that Mosby is ready. Mosby says that the only reason he was there on his day off was to visit his wife, who's an employee there. Sloan shows up at Faith's house and says she thinks she should opt for security and she's just doing her job, but Faith says she knows exactly who Sloan is and wants nothing to do with her. Ugh. Yikes. Back at NCIS, Gibbs figures out that Mosby was actually Evan's target and that the ice rink is where his kids have practice and the elementary school is the one that his kids attend. The whole time Evan was targeting Mosby but just disguising it as a mass shooting. Officer Mosby was the first responder on the scene of the brothers' accident, and he keeps speaking in court to make sure that the brother stays in jail, so Evan thought that if he killed him, his brother would have a better chance at being released. The team tells Evan's dad that if he really wants to protect his son, he'll tell them where Evan is hiding, and he leads them to a motel room. Gibbs decides to send Torres in alone, who has now reached, ultimate swan form. Is that what swans do? I don't know why swans just flex on us like that. Torres goes in and confronts Evan and scares him into abandoning his gun, allowing Gibbs and McGee to come in and arrest him. Afterwards, Sloan goes to Faith's house again and says that the reason she wanted to cut all ties with her was because she knew if she saw her again, she wouldn't be able to let her go. Faith then asks why Sloan moved to DC if she knew that would mean risking seeing her, which is a fair point. Sloan says she just couldn't let her daughter go, and then she gives Faith this picture of her and Sloan on the day Faith was born, and she gives her her phone number next to a little note that's just in case, no matter what, and it's on the green scratch paper, and I'm just oh, it's a really emotional scene, which is why I'm squawking. Down in Gibbs's basement, McGee questions Gibbs on why he sent Torres into that room alone if he was already full swan. And then Gibbs says, I got one with the swan, one with the kid, one with a plant. What a beautiful family portrait he's just painted. Gibbs then wonders if taking this staple that he's built his life around for the past several decades and just throwing it into the fire on a whim maybe wasn't such a good idea. A valid concern. He also says that he doesn't know where he'll end up without it, which is ominous. We then cut to Ziva's office, where Bishop is replotting. She's replotting a new scheme. We then cut to Ziva's office, where Bishop is repotting her new plant. Then there's this shot of landlady Odette Malone walking into the room, and she's definitely not Ziva. But for a split second they wanted you to think she was. It turns out that Bishop has changed her mind about cleaning out the office and now intends to use it herself from time to time. What? Odette then says, the funny thing about hope, once she gets into your blood, she never leaves you. Me, crouched over my laptop at 3 o'clock in the morning writing Ziva theories. Odette then leaves, saying she'll be seeing Bishop, and we end on a shot of Bishop looking around the office, and that is Perenial. There was a lot happening this episode, and I know I say that somewhat frequently, but this episode had 5 simultaneous plot lines happening, And at points, the main case kind of felt like a B plot, which I don't mind, to be honest. If we have to sacrifice case time to get like a really interesting character arc, I don't mind. I really loved the Sloan stuff. I was just really emotionally invested in it. It was just really heartbreaking to watch the scenes between the two of them. I don't know how soon we'll be hearing from Faith again, but I definitely think it's gonna get brought up again in the future. There was an interesting moment between Gibbs and McGee in the basement where McGee was kind of questioning Gibbs and his decisions and his motives. And I think we might see some of that conflict come to a boiling point in the next episode. If you've seen the promo, it looks hella tense. We also know that McGee has and will continue to explore his career options a little bit. So seeing him in this position of elevated power, if you will, is really interesting. Gibbs just felt really vulnerable this episode, and he was like grappling with whether or not he made a good decision getting rid of rule number 10, because getting personally involved in a case seems to continuously have these repercussions that he feared. And he also has to deal with all of it, like stuff from Sloan and stuff from McGee and stuff from Bishop. Let's talk about Bishop for a moment. And by a moment, I mean the next 20 minutes, probably. Oddly enough, the conversation that Bishop and Gibbs have in this episode where she's like, if you know, I need you to say it, is almost identical to a scene I was hoping we would get in Silent Service a few weeks ago. And so I'm so glad we got it, even if it is like a few episodes later. I don't think Gibbs is lying. I don't think Gibbs is intentionally lying. Let's put it that way. I think deep down in his gut, he has to know that Ziva is probably out there. Just the whole vibe of him in the cabin during and even if you go back and watch Family First, he tells DiNozzo to take care of his family, like not just his daughter. The way, I sound crazy. I'm like, Gibbs has always known Ziva's alive. I definitely think Gibbs, deep down in his gut, knows that it's a real possibility Ziva's alive. But I think it's too painful for him to admit that to himself and be wrong and like have to grieve her again, if you will. That sounds really depressing, but I think that might be what's happening. Because you can see, like, when he's talking to Bishop and he's like, I stare at that desk and, all I see is that she's not there, that she's dead or whatever, which is also kind of shady to Bishop, and I didn't pick up on that until the 5th time I watched it, and I was like, oh, you can really see the impact that losing all of these daughter figures has had on him, and I think it would be excruciating to him if he had to go through that again with Ziva. And I think Gibbs has just tried so hard to let go, and that's why he keeps yelling at Bishop like, this is what happens, you can't let go. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Gibbs will probably find out at some point. You got to wonder. I say you again, it's me wondering these things. I'm just wondering what his reaction will be, because there was that line in where he was like, the next time you withhold relevant information from me, you're done. As happy as I would imagine he would be to find out that Ziva is alive, I think he's also going to be really mad, to put it lightly. I feel like he's gonna feel betrayed, which fair. How will that impact not only Bishop's relationship with Gibbs, but Bishop's relationship with the team? Torres and Casey, I'm sure they'll care, but it's not as deep to them. But McGee and Palmer, what are they gonna think? I'm just, can you tell in my voice I'm getting excited? Oh, why do I do this to myself? And we're talking about how Gibbs is really vulnerable right now. What if something in the finale arc puts him at risk? And that's a reason maybe Ziva would have to come back to help save him, defend him. I don't know. That office, boy oh boy, have we opened a door with that one. And these things keep happening where I'm like, if they didn't want to turn this into an arc then why would they be doing the things that they're doing? Like, it would have been so simple to just have Bishop be like, well, I cleaned out her office and I saved this plant and I'm gonna revive it, or I'm gonna replant it to honor her, and it'll be very touching. But they didn't. They had Bishop saying that she's going to continue going into Ziva's office, and the landlady knows that she's going to be in the office. And there was that whole thing between Gibbs and Bishop, which I would be shocked if that does not get brought up again. Dare I say, I think we might be in the middle of a Ziva arc, which is like really exciting. Maybe I'll watch this video in like 2 months and be like, you fool, this is the last time we hear about it. Which, first of all, hi, like what happened to the plot? We also started the episode and ended the episode with people talking about hope, which is kind of food for thought. Bishop is just so invested in this now. I think Bishop is hoping that she's alive. Maybe she's hoping they'll become like pen pals or something. Maybe Bishop is staying there because she's hoping that she'll be able to interact with Ziva. Maybe she's there because she wants Ziva as like a secret mentor. I'm just so fascinated by Ziva and Bishop's relationship. Again, which is so interesting because they've never actually met, yet they have this like crazy intricate bond. Like they have this crazy intricate story between the two of them right now. Even just beyond Ziva, like the plot lines with Gibbs and Sloan and everyone, like I'm just really excited to see what happens next. I'm very invested in the plot line in a way that I kind of haven't been in a long time, which is really exciting for me. I kind of love that the office is like a place we go back to now, and by kind of I mean I just really love it. I don't think Ziva's gonna like Kool-Aid man burst through the wall, but Ziva knows the address. Funny enough, last review I believe I said that I didn't know where the finale arc was going because I didn't really see like a clear choice yet. And after this week now I see like 5 clear choices, so I'm just as confused but for like a completely different reason. Like, is it gonna be a Gibbs-centric arc? Is it gonna focus on that whole thing with the Secretary of Defense? Is it gonna focus on McGee finding a new job? Is it gonna focus on Ziva? We don't know. We have no idea. There's so many possibilities, and we're not quite into May sweeps, which is where things really get like heated up. But we're just about there. We have one more episode before that, which is next week's episode. And then there's a week of a rebroadcast. And then we're in the thick of it pretty much. Episode 21, which is historically where finale arcs start to get going. I know I kind of breezed by it, but I'm also curious to see what happens between Torres and Bishop. Because they had like a real moment last week, not a great moment. And again, I find that hard to believe it wouldn't be brought up again in some context. There's just so many things happening right now that this could really be a wild finale arc. I'm interested to see what they choose to explore in the finale and what they choose to explore later on. I would really, really, really love to see us go in depth with this whole Ziva plotline before the season ends. Like, as much as I love a summer cliffhanger, I really hope we kind of delve headfirst into this Ziva plotline before the season ends. Like, it's just too interesting to pass up, and I think they've consistently kept dropping hints and leaving doors open, maybe for a reason. If I had to make an educated guess, I would imagine that this Ziva plotline is involved in the finale arc. I don't think that's a huge leap. Perhaps the biggest question, will the plant survive? That's all I care about, to be honest. What do you guys think is happening with Ziva? How do you think Gibbs would react? How do you think Bishop might handle things? Like, where do you see the rest of season 16 going? I'm curious to know. I believe that's all for now. I'll see you next time. Remember to water your plants.